I was a young man engaging in an adult activity that had adult consequences while I was still a boy. And they don't understand that.
What is up, everybody? It's Ed Gow Jr. Dance Central and the man with that beautiful wood around him.
I love it, Ed. Every single time I'm surprised by what you come up with to preface me, Drew Stolen, Dance Central.
Great what's been going on, man? Are you snowed in?
No. We got lots of snow, but I broke out.
Yeah.
I'm not staying cooped up in the house with all this snow. I gotta honestly, the sun, it's been good to get outside. But I'm using it as workouts. Remember, I got accountability.
Yes, your accountability.
So those have been some of my workouts.
100%. Yeah. When we're recording this in our general area of the world, we've had so much snow. Like in less than a week, I don't know how much you've been shoveling snow, Drew, but I had to shovel at least 5 times. Thank goodness for a snowblower, by the way. But maybe I'm cheating on workouts. Sorry if I'm your accountability partner, I'm cheating on workouts.
You know, the snowblower for me is actually a workout. Yeah, mine. I got downhill on the driveway, and it takes a lot to actually push it up. So, I fight with the snowblower as opposed to being easy.
Okay. Good stuff. Well, if you don't know where you're at, we're at Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And also, we always have to say our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. So, Drew, I am really excited about the friend we have on today.
Absolutely, as you should be. Tell us
more. Why
should
I be? Why? Well, this, I hope I can call him a friend. Maybe he'll cuss me out after. I don't know. But this gentleman, this man, this father, this parent was one of the major reasons I'm still doing this today. When I was working at a father focus family center, I went online to find who else is doing this. And this gentleman came up in the search and I said, all right. And for 35 years, he said he's 29 and holding. For 35 years, he's been doing this and championing fathers, and a lot of what I refer to, and I consider him at least a digital mentor, and God willing, one day we'll get to meet personally. We'll be together because I need a picture. Before we bring him up, Kenneth Braswell is the Chief Executive Officer of Fathers Incorporated, a widely recognized national and international nonprofit organization supporting fathers, practitioners, researchers, and policymakers that provides capacity building services to thousands of organizations, working to ensure that fathers contribute to the healthy well-being of their children. He brings 35 years of collective work experience managing and leading fatherhood and community programs. Additionally, if that isn't enough, he serves as the National Director of the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse in the United States, directing and guiding strategic activities of the NRFC. So this is long overdue. If there's anything I can say is a fanboy moment in fatherhood, this is my fanboy moment in fatherhood. Welcome, Kenneth. How are you?
Gentlemen, I'm doing fine. How about yourself?
Good. Very good. Yeah. An honor to have you on the show, an honor to have this conversation to share and support fathers everywhere.
Yeah. Typically when people ask me that question, I always say it's better to be seen than to be viewed.
Oh sure. My gosh. Well, this is good. And Ken, thank you from my heart for taking the time, and thank you. I'm going to say it at the end also. Thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will be doing. It's appreciated.
No, thank you. Listen, when I saw your name the other night, when Betsy told me where I was going, I'm looking, I was like, wait a minute, I know this guy. See, Drew, you know him as Ed. To me, he's the doctor, right? That's who he is to me. So if I flip back and forth today between Ed and doctor, that's be confused as to what I want to be. And also, You are a friend. You are a motivator. I am also as proud of you as you are of me. Stayability is important in this space. I've seen a lot of people come and go, right? With great hearts, great intentions, all of the things necessary to do this work, but did not have stability. And they went to do something else. And so, anyone that continues to do this as long as you've done this, Drew, hopefully you'll be around and continue to do this work and carry it forward as well. I think you're a gentleman after God's own heart.
100%. Well, I'll kick it off and then Drew will back me up and go beyond me as always. So let's start about your background growing up and transitioning to becoming a dad. How did that happen?
Well, the how isn't really, part of the conversation that we
Okay,
should be
why?
having right now. It reminds me of when I found out my youngest son, when my wife told me she was pregnant. Um, the first thing I said to her was, "How?" And she looked at me like, "What do you mean how?" And I'm like, "You know what I mean." And so it's interesting that you want to start there because I'm actually I'm finishing up the last chapter of a book that I'm writing now called Too Seasoned to Care. It's a book about aging, and it's a book about understanding how to explore your life to determine the things in your life that have impacted you in a way that have made you who you are today. And part of that work is an exploration going back into my youth and looking at the things that have impacted me as a kid that has stayed with me all the way up until adulthood. And I'm actually, the last chapter of the book is actually letters to my younger selves. And so the reason that is letters to my younger selves is because there's a theory that every 7 years you are a totally different person from the 7 years before, meaning that at 7 you're not the same person you were at 0, obviously, but at 14 you're not the same person you were at 7. At 21 you're not the same person you are at 14. At 28, 21, and so forth and so on, and I'm going all the way up to 49. And the reason I decided to write those letters to my younger selves is when I began to start thinking about a letter to myself, my mind was, yeah, but you're talking to several different people who are not going to understand what it is you're talking about. So you have to talk to them individually so that you can tell them what they need to know at that stage in their particular life. And this morning, I was actually writing the letter to myself at 21, at 14 years old, to talk to myself about becoming a father. I'm talking to him about becoming a father. And I'm telling him that you are now 14 heading into 21, and in the next 7 years one of the things you're going to discover is fatherhood, and you're going to feel like you're too young to do that. Many things that you're learning in this space from 14 to 21 can be overwhelming. You're learning about life, you're learning about money, you're learning about independence, and you're learning about girls, and you're learning about sex, and you're learning about influences. But the fatherhood piece is going to be the thing that's going to impact your life for the rest of your life, regardless of what your relationship is. For me, at 17 years old, I became a father while I was in the military and 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean in Germany, in the military, when I found out that early morning that my girlfriend had the baby. And I did not, when I think about it, I can't even describe a feeling other than just emptiness. I didn't have no emotions. It was just like, all right, you're a dad. But I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad. I wasn't mad. I wasn't anything. I didn't really even know how to feel. A, because I wasn't home, because I couldn't be in the mix of it. And B, I had no idea what I was going to do, and wasn't ready for the experience. And at the same time, had not had a relationship with my own father. So that brought up all of the pieces around, okay, where are you going to learn about becoming a man? Because that's why I went into the military. I literally went into the military because the tagline said, the army will make a man out of you, or will make the man that you need to be, or something like that. And I was like, I need to find manhood. I had nobody in my Brooklyn community that was serving that role, and decided to go in the military. But no one told me, when you asked the question, how, that this engagement that I was going to take part in sexual relationships with a girl, could ultimately end up altering my life for a momentary pleasure, right? And no one told me that. No one told me that that could happen. I knew physiologically, biologically, it could happen, but no one told me about the life connection, which is what's going to happen to you when your child is born. And in an ironic way, the same hole that I was suffering as a result of my father not being in my life, because I didn't know, didn't understand, I began to create the same hole in my daughter's life. And so that early part of my life now has always been a look back of reconstruction to reconstruct the life that I didn't build with the right foundation in the beginning. And so now I'm working from the top down. My daughter and I have a great relationship now, but part of the reason that I do the work that I do is because of that time in my life, to make sure that when boys do become men and do become fathers, whether they're boys or men, that they understand that everything they do from day one matters. Not when the child appears, not when they graduate from kindergarten, not when they go to high school. It starts the moment you find out you are a father. And that probably was the most profound um, piece of me being a dad and becoming a dad at 17 years old. You always say, I wish I knew then what I knew now, but that's not how life works. Right. And so, but the great thing and the blessing is I learned my lesson, and all of my children after the first one benefited from that lesson.
Mm.
Drew?
Yeah, Ken, thanks so much for sharing just that story and the journey you're going through to reflect on your experiences and bring you to this place to be able to share your wisdom through that book. Um, and you identified a few challenges that you faced in that process. And so I'm wondering if you could share, maybe now from your experience, what do you think are the biggest challenges that dads face in today's world?
Oh, worthiness, that they don't even believe that they're worthy to be fathers.
Mm.
And a lot of that comes as a result of them not having the tools that they think they need to be fathers. And I think society has set the standard, that finances is the end all be all for all that you need to be a great father. And so, with all of the resources and capabilities that a man might have to take care of his child, if he doesn't have the ability to provide for his child, he doesn't feel like he's worthy of being a father. And so, that piece of work is a piece of work, obviously, that should be starting in your home. But when you're coming from a home where those lessons aren't being taught, you, again, as a young man like I was a young man engaging in an adult activity that had adult consequences while I was still a boy. And people, and they don't understand that. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is so their worth is, they don't believe that they're worthy. And then on top of that, which is kind of the second piece of this, which is essentialness, they don't know how important they are, right? They don't believe that what they are contributing to their child is something that is absolutely necessary and not negotiable by anybody, including the mother of their child, and most definitely society. And so we need to start talking more affirmatively to our boys about their importance in life, period. But when they do become fathers, they should know that your presence, your engagement in the life of your child is a necessity, is not an option. It's not like when I was growing up. I joke about this, Drew, sometimes. Growing up in Brooklyn, New York, where my mother was, um, didn't have all of the means, but always tried to give us what she thought we wanted. And there were times in our household when we were eating, cereal that was meant to be eaten with milk, that we wouldn't have any milk. And would go in and say, "You better put some water on that." Right. And we would like, "Mom, you can't put water on it." But if you wanted some cereal, either you were going to eat it dry or you were going to eat it with water. And what I always say about that is, while you can eat cereal with water, it wasn't intended to be eaten with water. So while a single parent can raise a child, it wasn't meant for you to raise a child alone. It was meant for you to raise a child with the necessary ingredients that make our children whole. And in this sense, it is a mother and a father when that is possible.
Yeah,
Nice. Nice.
so important. Yeah, worthiness, and then that essential piece. Such important messages, and I think really resonates with what we see as well. So, yeah,
Hmm.
Ed, over to you.
Yeah, I want to go in a little bit further, and from your valued and lived experience, for our fathers out there, how critical is father involvement in a child's development?
It's important in tangible and intangible ways, right? And so tangible ways is the presence of a father, lends support and stability. You know, when my son was probably three, maybe, yeah, he must have been 3 years old. We were in a barber shop, and he was at my knees, and he was playing on an iPad or whatever he had on my knees. And we were in the barbershop, and the sounds of the barbershop was the sound of the barbershop. And I had this moment, that I looked down at him, and I said to myself, "Wow, I wonder what it must feel like to be in the barbershop with your father." Right? That was a moment that I had with him. And I often, live vicariously through my son in those moments when we're doing something together. And in my mind, I'm saying, "Wow, I wonder what it must be like for your father to be at your game. I wonder what it must feel like for your father to pick you up and drop you off every day of your academic life. I wonder what it feels like to wake up in the middle of the night, because my son has cramps sometimes, and yells my name, and have your father actually answer and come into the room to do something about you." And so it is that availability and presence that is so critical, to have. And fathers need to kind of understand that, and understand that there are things that you can do in a tangible way, which is availability, that build your children. The intangible thing is the things that occur as a result of the tangible things. I wonder if my son knows I love him. I wonder if my daughter knows I love her. I wonder if my daughter knows that her dad thinks that she's beautiful, that she's smart, that she's worthy. I wonder what my daughter feels like when she is, around some guy, and she is remembering what her father told her about guys, right? Because my sister didn't have that when we were growing up. She didn't have a man telling her, like, "This is what you should be looking out for." So the intangible thing is, we bring this sense of security for our children. We bring this sense uh, of love for our children that is as important as the tangible stuff, but it's the stuff that they lean on in the quiet moments of their life, right? It's when I go to school, and and I remember one time my son, came home and told me that some boy had pushed him or something. And I said, "What did you do?" And he said, "I pushed him back and I pushed him down." And then I said, my daddy's gonna be here, at after school. And I kind of laughed. We joked about it, but in my mind, again, I went back to that space. I wonder what it must felt like for his self-esteem to be able to know that I can get into a confrontation and that my daddy will be here. Right. And so it's those intangible and tangible things that we have to bring to the table, and they are equally important.
This is good. Drew?
Yeah, the examples in the stories you tell, Matt, I really love how you phrased it. You're asking yourself this question. I wonder what it feels like. And so, what I think of is these generational cycles. And we hosted a fatherhood summit, online summit this past fall, and that was our theme. We're breaking the cycle. And so, what role do you think fatherhood plays in breaking generational cycles, especially in communities where fathers may not have been present?
Consistency, right? And consistency and availability. In our life skills curriculum, we have a whole module on consistency.
Mm,
With our dads, when they come through our curriculums, we have both a life skills curriculum and a fatherhood curriculum. Our dads must go through the life skills curriculum before they go through the fatherhood curriculum.
okay.
And why do they do that? Because there are life skills that are necessary before I start talking to you about being a father, right?
Mm,
And one of those modules is on consistency, where we talk to them about what consistency looks like and what it is. And we use the analogy of bowling. And the analogy is the number one goal that all people have when they walk into a bowling alley, put the shoes on, and walk up that lane is to score 300. No one walks into the bowling alley not thinking they're going to score 300 that night. It's not until they throw the first ball and there's still 8 pins still standing up. They know that they're not going to get 300, right? And so, but then the question is, how do you get 300? So, how do you get 300 is you got to throw that ball in a consistent way that's going to knock down those pins 13 times. That is the consistency. It's not volume, because people think if I spend a lot of time with my child, then that's going to matter. The a lot doesn't matter if the a lot is every weekend to you. It's the consistency. It's how often do you continue to show up. And so when fathers begin to understand that one of the things that's necessary to break a generational curse is not volume, it's consistency. And what consistency does with a child is it says that I have no doubt that my father is going to show up. Why? Because he's consistent, right? He leaves no doubt in my mind that he's not going to show up, because that's not something he does. He does it consistently. And so, and with that consistency is the second thing that I always say. People always ask me, what's the most important thing a father can give to a child? And oftentimes when I ask other folks that, they always start with love and, warmth and all that stuff. And I'm like, that stuff is good. But my children will tell you, because I tell them all the time, is availability.
mm,
How available am I to them when they need me? Right. So I go nowhere. I speak on no panel. I when I'm not home. This, people can say that folks are obsessed by holding their phones, but when I'm away from my home, I am holding my phone for a reason. And the reason that I'm holding my phone is just in case my wife or my children call. Right. So even if I'm speaking and I have this sitting on top of the podium and I see one of my children's name, I'm good enough to keep on speaking, but also pick up my phone and text them, I'm doing something right now. Are you good? And they all know, if they're good, to say, I'm good. They know I'm going to call them back. But if they say something else, what do you think is going to happen? Excuse me, but I need to go take this, because my children know that if they're not good, I'm available. That gives your children, your wife, a level of comfort when they know that no matter when I need my father, he is going to be available to me. I think it's also the thing that creates the largest hole in our hearts when we do not have fathers in our lives, because we don't have the availability to be able to connect with our fathers when we need them the most.
Mhm. I love
Nice.
that. I love that in
Yeah.
terms of that's such a tangible picture of being what you said, available, and there's no barrier that's going to prevent you from being available for your
Right.
child. So, amazing.
Right.
Nice.
Well,
Ken, I want to ask, what are some practical ways dads can improve their involvement in their child's lives, even when time is limited due to work or other responsibilities? Sort of building on what you were saying just a
mm,
few moments ago, that you always carry your phone with you. Can you
mhm.
provide some practical solutions or suggestions?
The biggest one is start with the small things, right? Pick up the phone. Like my kids are, I'll be driving and one of them will call and I'll say, "Hey, what's going on?" And they'll start just rattling off about something, and then they'll go, "Oh, I was just calling to say hey," right? But those conversations then build into the bigger things because now you're having a conversation. Oh, what are you doing later? Oh, we're not doing it. Let's go have dinner. Oh, it's so the small things always build into the bigger things. So if we're at dinner now and I have all my kids and my wife there, now we're having a conversation, and now all the kids are like, we should go to Disney for Christmas. Oh, okay. Disney it is. It's the small things always build to the bigger things. We think it's the opposite way. We think we do and come in the door with all the big things, and then it gives us the little things. It's like, no, do the things that don't cost any money. Do the things that only cost you time, only cost you effort, but shows that you are connected and available to your children. The other things are going to come. You're going to figure out, I took my all my girls. We had a first time I've ever done this. I don't even know why I called it this. We had a multiple date night. It's a multiple date night, and so I had all three of my girls, or three of my girls and my wife. I took them, or two of my girls and my wife. I took them to go see Mary J. Blige as a Christmas. Right? We just went. We had a date night. I took them to dinner. We had steak. They had lobster. We left. Went to do Mary J. Blige and Neo, and it was just the four of us in the car. They were having girl chat, and I was just driving, listening to them chat back and forth about getting Instagram recipes and all those kinds of things. But it was my way of being able to not only give them the individual attention but also give them the collective attention in the way. But in those conversations that night, we came up with all these other things we wanted to do over the summer and then the next day and the next week. So it is always, Drew, for me, if you are a dad looking for ways to get connected with your child, there is no top 5 list that's going to work for everybody, right? But the one thing on that list that I know is going to work is start with the small things. Pick up the phone, FaceTime, show up when they're not expecting you to show up somewhere. Give them a gift on a day that's not Christmas, the birthday, or an anniversary. Do something random that's nice for them. Send them flowers if they're girls. If they're boys, like my boys, my son and my nephew, they'll come home some days and I'll hear them because they're on their PS4 in there, and so the door's open, so I'm hearing them and all their friends talking in there. So sometimes I'm hearing them talking about things that they want. And so if I hear something, I have a little piece of paper and I'll write it down. I'm like, okay, I heard him say, like the other day, he wanted the Anthony Edwards new shoe. And so I kind of wrote it down on the thing. And so when he came home the other day, when he walked in, he had the pair of sneakers on his chair. And he came in, he's like, Dad, like, you got these on his? I was like, yeah. He's like, thank you. I'm like, nah, we good. You didn't, it was not special. It was for him, it was know that I'm thinking about you when you don't know I'm thinking about you. And I'm listening to you when you don't think I'm listening to you. And I'm hearing you when you don't think I'm hearing you. So that he never doubts that his father is A, thinking about me, B, hearing me, or B, not always looking for a way to show my affection outside of, the days that the calendar tells us we're supposed to do it.
Nice. Really good. Drew?
Yeah, it's hard not to feel convicted after that story. And I hear my kids over talk. I overhear my kids talking all the time. And I'm like, And I even remember what they were talking about. I mean, in some instances, yes. Other instances, no. But anyways, that's a beautiful picture of what it means to always be thinking of your children and to be mindful of what they're expressing through things. So
Mm-hmm.
again, really powerful. But I definitely do feel convicted. Well, let's shift and talk a little bit about the emotional aspects of fatherhood. And so particularly, like how can dads navigate the emotional aspect of fatherhood with young children who don't need just financial support, but they need that emotional.
Right. There's a difference between um, emotions and feelings in the sense that at 7 o'clock every morning for the last 8 years, I don't feel like getting up and taking him to school, but I love doing it. Right?
Yeah.
If my wife comes in and says, "Honey, I need you to do whatever," I ain't feeling you right now, but I'm going to do it because I love you. And I think that for fathers, we have to distinguish the difference between the things that we feel about and the things that we have emotions about, right? Because emotions are different. If love is your consistent emotion, then no matter how you feel, you're going to respond to love. If hate is your consistent emotion, in the contrast, everything that you do and every way you feel is going to justify to you why you buy into the things because you hate. And so for your children, love should always be the primary emotion that you have. So that how you're feeling doesn't matter. You don't do it because of how you're feeling. You do it because of the emotion that it gives you when you do it. You don't know. Doing something kind may change how you feel, right? And so we have a progressive change model at Fathers Incorporated that we use when it comes to having an impact on the fathers that we serve. And it is if I can, um, if I can change how you feel, I can change how you think. If I can change how you think, I can change what you do. But I can't change your actions until I understand what you're thinking. And I can't change what you're thinking until I determine how you're feeling. Right. And so for our dads, our number one focus is to always identify what they are feeling and connect those feelings to what we already know is their emotion. It's why they're with us in the first place, because they love their children. But they're feeling a sort of way because child support is killing their checks. Because every time they talk to the mother of their child, they're arguing because they don't have a job that they can adequate. They're having a whole bunch of things that they got a lot of feelings about. But that emotion that they love what they do is what's keeping them in the game. And you have to help them distinguish the two of those things, because sometimes they'll take those emotions, they'll take those feelings and feed off of those feelings, not knowing that you are destroying the thing that you are having emotions by and the reason that you're here in the first place. And so it's a difficult, I know that for some guys, they might be saying, I'm not exactly sure how to do that. And yeah, there is a very simple way that you can do that. It's like anger. Anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is as a result of another emotion. So whenever you're angry, you have to ask yourself, why am I angry? Once you identify why you're angry, then you can deal with being angry. But until you deal with what's making you angry, you're going to always be angry. Flip that on the other side, right? If I love this person, the question is, why do you love them? It's because it's my child. Okay, let's go with that. So why do you feel about child support the way that you feel about child support if you love your child? Especially if you're only thinking about it in the sense that child support is really only supporting your child. That the money you spend on your child is minimal. Trust me, as someone who has 5 kids who have come through my life, if child support was all I had to pay throughout my life, I'd have a thick bank account right now. But some point they turn 18 and your financial obligations don't end when they turn 18. In fact, they increase tenfold by then if you have a real relationship with them. So you might want to be okay with your little $200 a week right now, if that's what you're doing. And there's no need. There's no to me. There's no celebration on the day that your financial obligation ends if it's child support. That's not a day to celebrate, because what you're saying to me is that you never understood what it meant to be a father in the first place. You missed the point.
Stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Want to continue on and ask, what role does communication play in effective fathering, and how dads can better communicate with their children, co-parents, and even their support networks?
There's a lot in that. There's a lot in that, because there's a lot. Goodness, because there's a lot of factors when it comes to
Yeah.
communicating, right? It is
Hmm.
who you're communicating to. What is it that you're trying to convey in your communication? Um, Knowing the difference between communicating, talking, and arguing, right? Those are just because you're opening your mouth and words are coming out, that doesn't mean you're communicating. Communicating is when I say something, you hear it, you interpret what I say so that I understand that you understand it in the same way that I move it back. You tell me how you think, uh, how you feel and think about what you said. I receive that. I act on the understanding that I get it from you, and that cycle continues. That's communication. Arguing is when you say something to me and I'm not caring how it means, what you meant, or whatever. I'm on the defensive. I'm only responding in response, right? And then talking is for no real informational purposes other than to people to use their vocal cords, right? And so that's what yelling is. Yelling is there's no real communication going on, and there's no, it's just sounds going back and forth. And so it's important to kind of understand that, particularly for dads. And then my wife has always said something to me that I lean on all the time, more often than I probably would think that I do it. And my wife always says, babe, you can say anything to anybody. It's just how you say it. Right. And so you can say anything. You just got to think about how you're going to say it. I always take that step further, which is, but then you also have to ask yourself the question if you should say it. Like, just because you want to say it, you can wrap it up in the nicest paper you want to wrap it up with, but you still probably shouldn't say it. You probably should keep it to yourself. Like, you don't have to talk just because you have the ability to talk. Sometimes silence says more than than noise, right? And so for fathers, it's one of the critical pieces. It's also part of our life skills curriculum, communication. We have a whole module on communication where we talk about really kind of understanding how you communicate, things like what's your love languages, right? How do you communicate? How have you been taught to communicate? My wife and I share a story that I actually wrote about in my book. When we first met, um, we were yellers. That's like we just yelled at each other. And so one day we were having a conversation, and she was describing for me how she was raised in a big house on Long Island with all of her brothers and sisters. And in order for them to communicate and hear each other, they were always yelling because everybody was trying to be heard. So in order to be heard in that house, everybody was yelling. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment in Crown Heights with my younger brother and sister and just my mom, and you can hear a conversation from the kitchen to the bedroom in normal tones. And so for me, it voices didn't have to elevate much to sound like yelling, right? In her house, it had to really amplify to be yelling. So when I would say to her, stop yelling at me, she would always say, I'm not yelling. And it took me a minute to realize from her perspective and how she was brought up to understand communication and how she communicated in her house, the tone to which we were talking was not yelling for her, but it was yelling for me. And so we had to have a conversation about equalizing and getting to a space where we both agreed that at this tone and at this level constitutes yelling, right? And so when we adjusted, we haven't had we I don't think we've ever yelled at each other again in our lives. And I'm talking now 14, 15 years ago when we had that conversation. But because I understood her from that perspective, it allowed me to shift how I communicate. People have to be taught that. You just don't learn that. If you don't learn that in your household, if you don't learn that from your living, if no one plays that out in your life where you successfully understand how to communicate with someone, even when you don't necessarily agree with them because you have a common goal, that's a life skill. And when you don't have that, and that's a critical life skill, Drew, if you don't know how to communicate, man, you can't. I don't know if even if you're married, but if you can't communicate, what are you doing?
True, 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 true. Drew?
Yeah, that is definitely true. It's funny. I was Sophia had one of her friends over the other day, and they wanted to make a friend call, so the other friend who had to be in the hospital, and listening to them on the phone, both with the person who was the gatekeeper and then of course with their friend, I was like, they need some help. Like, anyways, so we did a little practice with them afterwards, and then I also we talked about the importance of learning to communicate. But anyways, they did honestly they did well, but it is a life skill, so crucial,
Right,
so
right.
valuable.
Yeah.
But
Right.
as we
And
kind
the
of
other
wind
thing is,
down,
I just
oh,
want
go
to say
ahead.
this. The
Yeah, yeah.
other thing is generationally, right? Like, listen, the moment I say to my kids, back when I was young, or back in the day, or when I was growing up, immediately their whole receptors turned off. There's no more, nothing coming in no more, right? The minute I start talking about old school, right? They're not trying to
Yep.
hear that anymore. And so when you're raising children in this new generational age, particularly our Gen Zers and these new alpha gens, they communicate totally different from how we used to communicate. And so if you're not understanding that how our children communicate differently, as an adult, you can become extremely frustrated in being a parent for your kid because you're thinking they're not getting it. And there's no, they're not getting it because you are literally speaking a different language that they don't understand because the world has um, cultivated them in a different way than we were when we were coming up. No longer is it do as I say and not as I do. No, I'm gonna do what you say, and then I'm a fact check because I'm gonna go to Google to make sure that you know what you're talking about before I listen to you. And then, if you really want to take it another level, there's this 900 number that they've been telling us about in school for the last 15 years that is at my disposal, right?
Yep.
And so, communicating with our children is even much different than it was before. And so, that's why when you said communication, I'm like, goodness, that's a skill set that you don't get easy, but it's probably the most critical thing you will ever know if you want to be successful in any relationship.
Yeah, absolutely true. And so right when it comes to this language or lack thereof, let's say that the youth are bringing to these days. So as we kind of wrap it up, if there's one piece of advice you give to fathers who are wanting to grow and improve their fatherhood, what would that be?
Take your time. Like, take your time. Like, time waits for no man, but every moment is yours. Right? Embrace your moment. Embrace what it is you are experiencing in the moment, whether it's good or bad, because it's still your moment. And when it's a joyful moment, you're going to look back on it with a smile. When it's not so joyful, you're going to look back on it as a lesson. They both have contributions into your life. And so, but if you slow down, take your time with them and not try to rush through your moment, you can actually figure out what those moments mean as opposed to rushing through them and being frustrated because now you don't understand why what just happened.
Nice. Good
Yeah,
stuff.
that's really good.
Yeah. Kenneth, want to say thank you for sharing the most valuable thing you have and a father has, your time with us today. And if people want to find out more, where can they go?
Couple of things, like the young folks say, Google me, right? If you type in Kenneth Braswell, I pop up all over the place. If you type in Fathers Incorporated, you get connected to all of our websites. If you get to our main website, which is fathersincorporated.com, all of our social media little buttons and icons are there, email addresses, address, telephone number, all of those good things. But like I said, young folks say Google me. You'll find me.
You're Google-licious, right? You're Google-licious,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I'm Google-licious.
Well,
I like that.
Google. All right, Google-licious. Well, I want to say to you, thank you for what you have done, are doing, and will be doing for fathers and their families for many, many years to come. And we really appreciate you sharing your insights. And I have a feeling we're going to have you back if you can spare a little bit of time with us.
I always got something to say. And thank you
Okay.
so much. I literally just posted a meme earlier today. And the quote was, I was thinking about this the other night. And the quote was, I have a lot to say, but I have much more to do.
Love that. 100%. All right. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. If you're not making history, make money, but try to do both and make it better.
Yeah.
Take care. All right, man. What do you got to say?
I love these conversations. That's what I have to say. I stick with the presence and availability. The story of overhearing the son talking about these speakers and then having them there was just that thoughtfulness, that mindfulness of your children and what matters to them, and just being able to surprise and delight from the heart of the father. And that for me is a big takeaway. So that stood out.
Yeah, just so much wisdom and being able to relate with the modern day challenges of being a dad and so many great stories.
Mm-hmm.
Just relatable. I think that everyone who's listening, if you're a dad, father, meal killer, giver, I think there was at least one or two of those stories you could relate to. So that was so cool. So as we wind it up today, as always, if you want to get in touch with us, email us, podcast@dadcentral.ca. Suggestions, guest suggestions. You have tips for us. We don't know everything. Believe it or not, Kenneth doesn't know everything either, believe it or not. If you want to get to our resources, we have on our website, dadcentral.ca, if you want to check out the podcast. Here's our website, dadcentral.ca, a lot of great resources. And as always, we want to say, always thanks to Dove Men Plus Care. They believe that care is the best of a man, because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. As always, want to say thank you for spending the most valuable thing you have in your life, your time with us. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. If you're not making history, if you're not making money, make history, but try to do both and also make it better. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and walk good.